Water has four important properties which are important for living things, the so-called cohesive properties, adhesive properties, thermal properties, and solvent properties, and I'm now going to explain these. Cohesive properties allow water molecules to stick together. How do they stick together? Well, of course, by hydrogen bonds. So cohesive forces cause water molecules to stick to other water molecules because of hydrogen bonding. The question is now why is this important? Well, when we have a tree, for example, let me draw a tree. How do you draw a tree? Okay, let's say that this is a tree, the crown of the tree with leaves. Water is pulled up, the vessels of the tree, into the branches, into the leaves, through very thin tubes called the xylem vessels. So xylem vessels are very thin tubes that basically pull up the water. And as the water is pulled up, it pulls along other water molecules. And this is basically because of cohesive forces. The water column going up the tree does not break because the water molecules stick together. So if you want to see another more everyday example, if you, for example, take tissue paper, you're able to absorb or take up water, and the water is soaked into the tissue paper because of these cohesive forces. So I've just made a drawing over here, but you might want to explain this using some text. So it is important for transporting the water up a tree, for example. Now, adhesive forces allow water molecules to stick to hydrophilic non-water molecules. So this is cohesion is water sticking to water, and adhesion is water sticking to non-water. And here too, we have an important example. You have, for example, a plant cell, and there is a plant cell wall made of cellulose. And of course, the cell is composed mostly of water, and inside the cellulose cell wall, you now have water molecules, H2O in cell wall. So the water likes to stick to the cellulose cell wall. And this is also relevant because as the water is pulled up a tree, and there are cells involved here, and the water can also be pulled outside of the xylem vessels into the tissues of the plant through the cell wall. So this makes sure that the water can also reach other parts of the tree. So that is basically adhesion and cohesion. I'm now going to give you another example of this, probably more from everyday life. And where both of these factors play a role. So if you, for example, have a glass cup over here, and if it is filled with water, you're gonna see that the water is not completely flat, but if you look at the very side over here, you can actually see that the water goes up a little bit. Okay, so that is because of adhesive and cohesive forces. The water likes to stick to the glass, which is the adhesive forces, and other water molecules are being pulled along next to it, and that's cohesion. If you do not like this example, what about, for example, if you have, this is a window seen from the side, and there is a water drop on the window, and so there are water molecules in here. And so in here you have cohesive forces, I'm going to abbreviate this with a C, and those water molecules which stick to the glass, they stick because of adhesive forces. And those that stick over here to the glass, they also hold the other water molecules by cohesion, so that the rest of the drop doesn't just fall off. So that's basically a short explanation of adhesion and cohesion. Now, there are also thermal properties, and this relates to temperature. So, cohesion refers to the sticking of water, the stickiness. both of them. And here this really relates to temperature. Water has a high melting and boiling points. That's pretty important because water is mostly liquid. So H2O, let's just write, water is liquid between 0 degrees and 100 degrees. So this is important for life. And it has a high latent heat. This means changing from liquid to gas, evaporation that is, requires a lot of energy. And therefore this is important for cooling. So for example, evaporating sweat cools a person down. So evaporating water is important for cooling, and that's because of the high latent heat. And water has a high specific heat, and this means that water requires a lot of energy to change its temperature. In other words, water likes to stay at its current temperature, and this is important for buffering the temperature, keeping the temperature constant on planet Earth. So over here, high melting and boiling is water is liquid, and that's important for life. I have to add this here. This one is important for cooling, and this one is for keeping the temperature constant. And last but not least, water is a good solvent. And this means that the chemical reactions inside cells occur in water. Chemical reactions of cells take place in water. And this is only possible if the chemicals are dissolved in the water, otherwise these reactions wouldn't take place. So that is basically important. And again, all of these characteristics over here, the cohesive, adhesive, thermal, and solvent properties, can be explained in terms of water being a polar molecule and being able to form hydrogen bonds. So that is basically the importance here. Now you know why scientists, when they're trying to discover a new planet, the first question they always ask is there some liquid water on there? Because if there's liquid water present, it's theoretically possible, well, for life also to be there, at least life as we know it. If there's no water present, then life as we know it is not possible. So that's basically, this basically summarizes the important properties of water.